WOVU LP Cleveland.
Issues out of black and white. Let's concentrate on right and wrong.
And now, our voices today.
Why are we led by our pride?
Hello and welcome to Our Voices Today on WOVU 95.9 FM, Burton Bell Car Community Radio, streaming live from WOVU.org and the WOVU mobile app. I hope that all of you out there are feeling good and feeling well as we get acquainted with the beginning of our week here. Oh my goodness gracious, how have you been? Did you get some good rest the night before? I just cut the music all the way off. My bad. Did you get some good rest the night before? Did you get up today and drink some clean fresh water? Anybody tried the warm lemon water in the morning? And let me know. Send me a text on the talkback line, 216-200-7848, 216-200-7848, the WOVU talkback line. Get in touch with us anytime, any day, anywhere you are. You can leave a message or send a text. And because we always love to hear from our wonderful listening audience, and you can do so during this particular program, Our Voices Today, on this day. So that is how you can communicate with me and our guests for this hour. So yes, hope you got some good sleep. Hope you drank that water, clean and fresh. Hope you had a chance to eat some tasty and nutritious morsels of food. Hopefully fresh foods, not food products, but if that's what you got, that's what you do. You got to eat, you got to have energy, so that we are thinking positive, productive thoughts on this day and spreading that energy and that love out into the community, helping each other feel better and feel good. But I've been coming to the conclusion that, over the past weekend that, there has to be some static, some roughness, some jostling around of the energy and the spirit and the body. It just is the logic of our existence here on this earth. So take it all in stride, take it with a grain of salt, and know that everything is flipping temporary. So, all right. And so is that rant, right? That is also quite temporary, because I want to go ahead and introduce our guests for today from the wonderful organization, Friends, family. Y'all have been here with us month in and month out for quite some time. And it's always a pleasure as we continue to learn about our rights and how we can use them to our advantage and prevent them from being used against us or absconded or, hidden. That's what I meant. Absconded. That's a good word, though. Hidden from us. So our friends from Legal Aid are back. And today we're talking about family law. So again, if you have a question or a comment, text me on the talkback line, 216-200-7848, and I will read your comment or question over the air. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome back to the program, back to WOVU and Our Voices Today, Attorney Tanya Whitsett from Legal Aid Society. Although, am I correct in saying you're an attorney? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I wasn't sure, because sometimes we have other people in other positions come through with us. But again, Tanya Whitsett, Attorney Tanya Whitsett, welcome back, and thank you for coming. Yeah. And then also tagging along, this has been such a good time we've had in preparing for getting on air today, because our two guests are great friends. There's no doubt about it, and they were totally cutting up. Very spicy room. So let's welcome for the first time to WOVU Alex Rudin and I got the whole lowdown about how her name came about. But Attorney Alex Rudin, welcome to Our Voices Today and WOVU. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Either one of you, since you are experts in this area of family law, enlighten us for those who don't know or who aren't familiar. Maybe we've heard the term family law, not really sure what it is, how it touches our lives, but the word family kind of gives it away. We're all a part of some type of family, right? So, break it down for us. Tanya, what is family law?
Well, family law encompasses a number of subsets. So, family law involves divorce actions, custody actions, child support issues, property division between married couples. It can encompass adoption work, and it can touch on probate matters related to guardianship. It encompasses a lot. And a subset of our practice at the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland is domestic violence. So when we talk about family, it's a full umbrella of different types of cases, different types of legal issues that really impact the family in different ways.
Yeah, Alex, you want to add to that?
The only thing I would add is where the subset of domestic violence comes in is one of the major vulnerable populations we represent. So we represent survivors of domestic violence in civil protection orders, divorce and custody, and the other aspects that Tanya mentioned.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Thank you. And so October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I know this is probably a huge topic with legal aid. Domestic violence includes, physical violence in the home, sexual assault, all types of different things. Talk to us about the role that legal aid plays in helping people through situations of domestic violence.
Well, I think the first thing is, what is domestic violence?
Okay.
And domestic violence can be one incident, which it almost always is not, or a pattern of behavior. The physical is just the most visible. But it is physical abuse, it is sexual abuse, it is psychological abuse, it is financial abuse, it is stalking behavior, it is threatening and coercive behaviors. And all of these behaviors together, the goal of the abuser is to use those aspects to maintain power and control over a family or household member, which is somebody who, a spouse, former spouse, people who live together, but persons living as spouses, people who are related by blood or marriage, and people who have never lived together but who have a child in common. So it is much more limiting than just anybody. So that is the umbrella of domestic violence. And then we make determinations whether we should, what we should do. Sometimes getting a civil protection order, while a victim can get that, it may not be a safe choice. And whenever we look at a case, we have to weigh what that survivor wants, what is safe, what is realistic, and then looking at all of those things, safety planning and how we would screen for domestic violence.
Something you said that's interesting to me, that a civil protection order may not be the safest move for someone in a domestic violence situation. How can that be when that's like the magic golden ticket, right? Apparently, but we know colloquially it often doesn't really do a whole lot, right?
A protection order is a piece of paper. It is just as good as the abuser. Many abusers follow it. Some do not, as evidenced by, I'll give you an example, Aisha Frazier. He was under a protection order. So it is a good response to violence so long as law enforcement addresses it and enforces it, so long as a judge is able to provide consistency in both sentencing and in violations of that civil protection order. But I'll give you an example. If somebody is in hiding, or somebody moved here from a different state, is in hiding, says she wants a protection order, I may say, does he know where you live? And if he does, well, then that's fine. But if he doesn't even know she's in Ohio or in Cuyahoga County, you may not want to do that at this point. If there's a criminal case pending, you may want to wait till after that criminal case. So I think what a lawyer has to do is make these different assessments.
So
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add to a couple of other instances where it may not be in that survivor's best interest to pursue a civil protection order. For example, if she has no family here, no connection, no support system here, and her goal is to relocate, well, there are residency requirements usually in most states. So she may not want to invoke the jurisdiction of Ohio courts if her ultimate goal is to relocate. So she may want to leave, establish residency elsewhere, and then pursue her civil legal action.
Yeah.
That's
Is it because bringing the courts into it, does that bring attention then to the perpetrator? Like, does that...
both.
Yeah.
Then the court has
It
jurisdiction.
lets them know that something is going on. It lets them know where their victim is.
And if there are children, as Tanya said, and that victim relocates, that Cuyahoga County Domestic Relations Court, for an example, would have jurisdiction both over the client but over the children. So whereas the survivor can leave and may want to relocate, those children may not be able to.
All right. Good. Okay, so let's. This is good. You are hearing from our friends from Legal Aid Society, attorneys Tanya Whitsett and Alex Rudin from the Family Law Group. We are highlighting Domestic Violence Awareness Month in our conversation today. If you have any questions or comments, text me on the WOVU Talkback line 216-200-7848, 216-200-7848. This is Our Voices Today. I'm TC Lewis, and you're listening to WOVU 95.9 FM, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio, and we will be right back.
Stand up, my people. How will we ever know if we were never taught or told to never stop fighting, don't ever quit?
Here's a message from the Cleveland Community Police Commission.
Have you, a friend, or family member had a recent interaction with a Cleveland police officer? The Cleveland Police Commission is asking for your feedback. If you live, work, or visit the city of Cleveland, the Commission is asking for you to share any experiences that you or someone you know have had with policing in Cleveland in a short survey. A link to the online survey can be found on the Commission's website at clecpc.org. The survey asks about policies and procedures, but most importantly, it asks about police interactions with the community. Feedback from the survey will help the Commission to know if the Cleveland community has noticed the changes made in police training as required by the consent decree. Please submit your feedback by Sunday, October 31st. Visit the Commission's website at clecpc.org for a link to the online survey, or call 216-505-5920 for more information. We want to thank you for the time you take to complete the survey. Your input is a valuable measure in helping to co-create public safety in our neighborhoods. The community's voice, your voice, is what matters most when evaluating police reform.
This message is brought to you by the Cleveland Community Police Commission and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio.
Local news.
Are you in Ward 4? Let your voice be heard at the community meeting on Wednesday, October 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. Presented by Mount Pleasant Now Community Development Corporation. Community updates along with 4th District police reports and guest speakers from the community will speak. Community help applications will be available, and we all live in this community and we all know what the problems are. If you have a responsible solution, we want to hear from you. So please come October 27th, Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. at Mount Pleasant Now, 13815 Kinsman Road. Again, that's at Mount Pleasant Now, 13815 Kinsman Road. For more information, please call 216-215-0801. This message is brought to you from Mount Pleasant Now Community Development Corporation and WOVU, a Burton Bell Carr community radio station.
It's time to make the short story longer. Yeah. Stand up, my people. Stand for something in your life. Stand up, my people.
All right, welcome back. This is Our Voices Today. I'm TC Lewis. You're tuned in to WOVU 95.9 FM, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio. Our friends from Legal Aid Society are back here with us talking about life and the law, learning about our rights. And our topic for today is domestic violence awareness. We all know October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And if you have any questions for our guests, attorneys Tanya Whitsett and Alex Rudin, send me a text or leave a voicemail on the WOVU Talkback line 216-200-7848, 216-200-7848, the WOVU Talkback line. So we've gotten our heads wrapped around again. I mean, I guess it's never too many times that we can hear about domestic violence. It's something that's been around, I'm sure, since the dawn of time and human interaction or companionship, and it's not going away soon because we're still humans, right? So you can never hear about this issue too much. Well, maybe not. Okay. You don't want to be inundated, but I digress because we need to be aware of what things that are going on in our community, even if they aren't happening to us. But it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. If you need help, you can call Legal Aid at their intake line, and that number, as I scroll down, 216-687-1900, 216-687-1900. If you are having a domestic violence issue, you can go ahead and give them a call, see how they can help you out. Go ahead, Alex.
However, if you are in an emergency, please call 911 or Journey Center for Safety and Healing, and their hotline number is 216-391-HELP.
Okay. 216-391-HELP.
And this is in Cuyahoga County.
Okay, for Cuyahoga County. Yeah. So if you're having an issue right now and you're listening, you can hear our voices. Call that number. Call 911 if it's urgent and emergent, and you know, who knows what's going on. But, if you can stand to wait a few minutes, call the Journey
Center for Safety and Healing.
The Journey Center for Safety and Healing, 216-391-HELP, help. And thank you for that, Alex. And so let's see. Let's talk about legal protections, I guess, for survivors. Once you get into the process, but first I had a question during the last segment. I was wondering, since domestic violence situations often involve criminality, and legal aid doesn't do criminal stuff, how does that work out for you guys?
The statute, in March of 1979, Ohio enacted its statute. It is actually it's a twofold statute. It is a criminal statute, which details there must be acts of domestic violence as defined, and if so, a prosecutor can charge a perpetrator with the crime of domestic violence.
Okay.
Then and that is driven obviously by the prosecutors, and the case is brought in the municipality where the abuse took place. On the other hand, or in addition to, one can ask for a civil protection order. That is the action in and of itself, and that is brought, at least in Cuyahoga County, in the domestic relations court, and it deals with the entire county.
Okay.
So you can have both, you can have one. But my point earlier was if you go in and that person is charged criminally, it may be prudent to wait until the end of that criminal case before you go in and get a civil protection order. Both orders are mandated by statute. Both orders must be enforced by law enforcement. Both orders are entered into a database called the National Crime Information Database. And why I said both orders is if somebody is charged with the crime of domestic violence, that complainant, that victim, can request a criminal protection order, which it's called a temporary protection order, during the pendency only of that case. The civil protection order can last up to 5 years. And before Tanya, I know Tanya would like to add to it, but I just wanted to give 3 disclaimers that we didn't give in the beginning.
Sure.
While we know men can be abused under the statute, the National Institute of Health, the Violence Against Women Office, the Bureau of Justice Affairs, they all indicate that women bear the brunt of this type of abuse. Additionally, there is a argument in the domestic violence community. Are we talking about a victim or are we talking about a survivor?
Great. Okay.
Many experts in this area believe that they are victims when they are initially, when the abuse initially happens to them. Some say no. Interestingly, many women who are abused, they do not want to be called survivors at that point. So I utilize both. And as I speak, and I know Tanya speaks, we will talk about that victim survivor as the woman, and because it's better than saying he, she, there, whatever, and that the perpetrator as the male. Like I said, men can be abused, and they are abused. But for our purposes today, rather than spend everything with he, she, that's how we're talking.
I got you. Tanya?
Thank you. No, she's absolutely correct on that. And what I wanted to add was that the benefit of Cleveland Legal Aid being an entry point for victims is that we can try and help our victims navigate the complexity of having several legal actions going on at the same time. So if we are going to pursue a civil protection order or divorce or even represent them in some other civil legal matter, housing, consumer issue, and there's also that pending criminal case, we can time things. We work with the public defenders or the prosecutor's office rather, and the prosecutor's office, and we can time when we pursue our part of the action and also determine how things are going with respect to that criminal case and also be a source of support for that survivor.
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. That is a wonderful answer to my question on how you balance or how all those interact, the criminal, the civil piece, where legal aid comes in to help victims or survivors of domestic violence. Language is important and words do matter. So let's talk about the legal protections for survivors. We've talked about already criminal orders of protection, civil orders of protection. What other tools are at the disposal of advocates and people in these situations?
Well, Ohio has 6 types of protection orders.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We have.
Did y'all know that out there? Text me yes or no if you knew that there were 6 types of protection orders in Ohio.
And the Supreme Court promulgated forms for each of them.
Wow.
There are 2 that specifically address domestic violence adult. And those are the TPO, that's part of the criminal case of domestic violence. And there is then the DVCPO, which is the order that I've been talking about. And they have the same family or household members, and the acts are very much the same. But what Ohio did is it's not assault. They created the actual crime of domestic violence.
Okay.
So it's part of that statute.
Is that better or does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
because what happened was in 1979, when they enacted this law, they created domestic violence as a crime. Prior to that, perpetrators were charged with assault. The problem with assault is if you go back to the dynamic of an assault, it is usually done by a stranger. The difference is the dynamic of domestic violence is much more complicated because these are the same people that at some point in time profess love for each other. Right. So, victims leave, victims stay, but we're dealing with something totally different. Now we also have a stalking protection order. That is a civil order. Again, it's victim driven, and victims could be family or household members, but that would also include stranger stalking behavior. It could include neighborhood disputes. It's much broader, and that's brought in common police court. Okay. Then we have a criminal stalking protection order, which goes along with the crime of stalking. And under that, you cannot be family or household members. Then Ohio has a juvenile protection order, which they will include several types of actions. They will include domestic violence, stalking, the assault crimes, the other menacing crimes, and that is brought in juvenile court. And for that one, the respondent, the perpetrator, has to be under 18. That is strictly based on the age of the respondent. And in 2018, Ohio decided, we don't have enough, we need one more. So we have a dating violence protection order. Okay. It is also brought in the domestic relations court, but these are people who don't rise to the level of person living as spouse. So they don't live together. They may have a sexual relationship. They could be engaged but not living together. They don't have that degree of commitment, but there is still an intimate or romantic relationship. And that's what Ohio has. Most states do not have such a detailed system.
And, Tanya, did you want to say something first?
No.
Yeah. No. And we know that, things, these statutes, right? Statutes are laws and that are voted on by legislators, people that we as citizens elect. And so there's 6 different types of orders of protection. Why is kind of obvious, right? The intricacies of human interactions are complex. But who thought it was so important to create like this last one? Who brought up that piece of legislation? Do you know?
Representative Amila Sykes.
Okay, Amila Sykes. I'm sure a lot of people think this is a good thing. Dating violence. I mean, it's murky waters. Domestic violence. It's murky waters, and so the fact that the laws in Ohio are attempting to address each type of layer of I don't know, shady interactions or whatever, or bringing negative energy between two people and trying to sort it out. It's really interesting that so much attention is being paid to this, but that's because there's an elected official, Amelia Sykes, who at least in this latest iteration. So my whole point is that the reason why we have all of these different orders of protection is because someone thought to speak up and say, hey, we need this. And they brought it to the body of people who are in charge of creating the opportunity to have the attention brought to this particular issue. And it gets voted on. The election is coming up November 2nd. I don't know. I just like to tie things all together, how life, is very connected. So we have down the legal protections for survivors. Are there legal protections for perpetrators?
The due process protections that would be afforded every defendant. When you say legal protections, there are obviously legal consequences. There are aspects of what a defendant could do to remedy that situation. Usually the first time, unless it's bad, a defendant would not go to jail, would be placed on probation, would be ordered to potentially attend some kind of batterer's intervention, would have to do drug and alcohol assessments, would, if the court mandated, would have to maybe attend a parenting class if there are children. So there are these layers. Mm-hmm. And then often a victim at the end of that case could get a no contact order, meaning that that perpetrator cannot be around her while that person's on probation. So in a a broad way, when you say protections,
yep,
every defendant is afforded the due process protections under the law.
Thank you. We are speaking, you just heard the voice of Alex Rudin, an attorney in the Family Law Group with the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. And also with her, tried and true, is attorney Tanya Whitsett, sticking it out, putting up with Miss Judy over here. But we're going to go to a break. Yes, I'm telling on you. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about life in the law, family law, domestic violence, what we need to know. I want to talk about some of the things that kind of get left out of the conversation around domestic violence. Maybe you two ladies can enlighten us to some of those points. But this is Our Voices Today. I'm TC Lewis. You're listening to WOVU 95.9 FM, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio. We'll be right back.
To never stop fighting, don't ever quit. Just 'cause the rich get richer and the poor don't get. Excuse me, but I get so mad. Where could we have been? What could we have had? Yeah, it's time to lose those shackles and break those chains.
We are WOVU 95.9 FM. Our voices united. United to enhance our community. United to be a beacon of hope. United to empower our community. WOVU 95.9. Our voices united.
What I would say to you is that I see you. I know what it feels like to carry stress, pain, to feel alone, that you're in this alone. But know and understand that I see you. And at the end of the day, it is okay to not be okay.
This message of hope is from the Alcohol, Drug, Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board of Cuyahoga County, the Suicide Prevention Coalition, and WOVU 95.9 FM, Our Voices United, a Burton Bell Carr community radio station.
T&L Christian Bookstore proudly presents Vicki Truitt live in concert.
Oh, I've been daydreaming of a perfect love like
on Saturday, October 30th at 1 p.m. at the T&L Christian Bookstore, 13633 Euclid Avenue. Come out for inspirational Christian music combining Holy Scripture and treasured hymns.
I love you, Lord, and thank you, Jesus. I lift my heart.
Save Sunday for service. On Saturday, we have it church. Come see Vicki Truitt live on Saturday, October 30th at 1 p.m. at the T&L Christian Bookstore, 13633 Euclid Avenue.
Brought to you by WOVU 95.9 FM, Our Voices United, a Burton Bell Carr community radio station.
Why you go and listen to WOVU 95.9? Hey man, WOVU is that trending station, man. They got the best music in the area. They got the independent artists. They're all over Cleveland. They have something for everyone to listen to. Even the youth can dance to the rhythm of WOVU. Don't be a bumbleclot. Keep that dial locked to WOVU 95.9. The best station in the area. Check it.
It's time to make the short story longer. Yeah. Stand for something. Stand up, my people. Stand for something in your life.
Welcome back. You are tuned into Our Voices Today. I'm TC Lewis. Legal Aid Society of Cleveland is here with us, continuing our Life and the Law series, getting to know our rights around domestic violence, how we can be helped by Legal Aid Society, and also answering some other questions, getting some other information about family law and that whole shebang. But with us, breaking it down, is attorney Alex Rudin and attorney Tanya Whitsett. And Tanya was gracious enough. You know, Alex is so super humble. You know what I'm saying? You really have to pull information. Look at Tanya. Y'all are so funny. You really have to pull information out of Alex. And Tanya was kind enough to let us know that Alex actually wrote the handbook for, you got to get up to the mic.
For Ohio domestic violence law with Judge Ronald Adrian and now Judge Sherry Madej.
Wow. Okay. And so how did that fall into your lap? And your colleagues?
Years and years ago, I got a call from somebody who said, somebody from Legal Aid, who said that they wanted to do a domestic violence book, and the judge who was going to do it decided they couldn't. So my name came up because I had been doing trainings on domestic violence. And I said, oh, I'll do that. So I called Judge Adrian and I said, I think it's important that you do the criminal aspect of it. I will do the civil. We'll put it together and we'll put it into a book. And he graciously fought me and then agreed to do it. And upon his retirement, Judge Madej has taken up the mantle. But we separated it. He did the criminal statute. I did the civil statute. I also did the federal law, some tort law. He did some battered immigrant women, that part of the law. And we've created a book that we have to update every year. So depending on what the case law says, we update it. If things change, if we can pick up some examples of different things. And for me, I'll give you an example. There are issues relative to firearms. And now we see in the case law issues on strangulation. And I know it was a question you asked at the end. What do I want people to know about domestic violence?
Yes.
I want them to know that there are high-risk lethality factors, of which weapons and strangulation are two of the highest risks for women. In the issue of strangulation, it is the most lethal, violent, intentional, and gendered crime against women. When I say that, to understand that if I, as an abuser, put my hands around your neck and I impede by causing pressure to your neck, or I cause pressure to your body so you can't breathe, that is a life or death situation. So for me, if there's anything I can educate from now into the future, is on the issues of weapons and domestic violence and strangulation and domestic violence.
And I just want to add on strangulation, because actually I was going to bring up that point as well. So thank you, Alex. And I also want to add that Alex has over 35 years of experience in the field of domestic. 40 years in the field of domestic violence. But I also want to say, as it relates to strangulation and women of color, particularly women of darker hue, it doesn't automatically, it isn't always visible.
Okay.
So one of the things that
That's
we
a
can
great point.
impress upon women in particular, if at any point during an incident your airway is restricted or impeded, and it doesn't necessarily have to be hands around the throat. It could be an elbow. It could be laying on you to prevent you from breathing. You should seek medical attention. You should have that documented. It's not always visible, so you should definitely go to your medical provider, go to the ER, do something. Don't just think that it's nothing, because it is something, and it's not always visible. So please make sure you get that checked out. It's another form of documentation that's going to be very important in any type of civil or criminal case.
Judy?
And the only thing I wanted to say is, now that we've named that, there are several bills in Columbus that are looking to address that issue, because like I said with domestic violence.
The issue of strangulation?
Yes, I'm sorry, with the issue of strangulation, because once you identify it, then you can do something about it. And that is the process. And I know that Tanya and I have talked about it, and it's extremely important because, as Tanya said, if you don't go to the hospital or you don't get it checked out, you may be suffering from brain trauma that nobody knows about, because it takes 4 seconds to unconsciousness and 2 minutes. I could be getting that a little bit wrong, but 2 to 4 minutes to death. And because it is so lethal, where hospitals, forensic nurses, everybody is being trained to recognize signs and symptoms, because Tanya is right. In 50% of the cases, there is no visible injury. That doesn't mean there is no injury.
Right.
There is no observable injury.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about the weapons part of that too. We need to know more about be paying more attention to weapons in domestic violence situations. How do you unpack that for us?
When I talk about weapons, we know that firearms kill, and we know that in many of the lethal homicides of women, they have been killed by a weapon that their abuser had or had access to. So when you look at, like I said, strangulation and firearms, you are looking at the two greatest lethality factor for women especially.
Yeah.
And the hope is, as we keep educating people, that also includes courts, and all professionals, we would be able to know, because victims would then be telling us as well. It's something that we all have to screen for, but victims can be saying, listen, he's got 2 weapons. And as part of a protection order, When somebody is served with that protection order, they can ask, do you have weapons? And if the victim has already told the court that there are weapons, then that would be an easier way to get those weapons. I'm not saying that they can run in and search, or confiscate, but they can ask about those weapons.
And knowing those lethality factors are really key. The strangulation, the access to weapons, maybe threats to kill himself or herself, alcohol, drinking, drugs, drug usage. Those are really key because the lethality factors are there to help that victim or survivor understand their risk at serious injury or homicide. So it's really about educating that victim about, given your particular situation, if these factors are present, then you are more likely at risk of something serious or significant, even death.
Can I just add one thing? However, alcohol and drugs do not cause domestic violence. You get rid of the alcohol and drugs, you still have an abuser, albeit sober. So it is this learned behavior, this dynamic of power and control. I can't control my work environment, but as an abuser, I can control my home.
So when you find yourself in a situation where you realize you're being controlled, you're being overpowered, or having your power taken away from you, once you come to that realization, what are some things that you can do? And in talking about recognizing those lethalities and those contributing factors, that's definitely one of them, like kind of surveying the scene, taking inventory of what's going on around you. But what other types of things should we consider when we talk about safety planning or planning an escape or an exit, or rather, may not be such an escape, but
But those are precisely things that the victim should consider: the safety planning and escape route, making sure they have all their personal documents hidden somewhere so they can immediately grab them and leave, having some cash, ready cash available, knowing where your children are, how to contact them, coming up with a code word, for example, so that they know if they hear that, or if a friend hears it, it's a code word that you maybe even tell a friend that if they hear it, then they know to either involve the police or that they need to come and get you. So that is some aspect of the safety planning. One of the things, I know you probably have another question, but what I wanted to do was also remind the audience, because we do serve a larger area than Cuyahoga County, but there are domestic violence shelters available for people who need that type of service. We have Home Safe in Ashtabula. In addition to Journey Center for Safety and Healing in Cuyahoga County, there's Witness Victim Service Center, Jewish Family Services Association, Laura's Home for Women's Crisis Center. In Geauga County, there's Women's Safe, and in Lake County, there's Forbes House. But I also want to point out, too, that we have on our intake line at the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland a Spanish intake line. The number is 216-586-3190. So the the resources that are available outside of the legal advocacy context include therapy services, group counseling, transition services, and the like.
And that just reminds me to put a plug in. We underscore the importance of advocates. And advocates are extremely important in helping a survivor traverse the landscape, looking at all the orders, looking at all the courts, and helping that survivor make decisions. But I will say, how often a client will come in and say, I want a divorce. And as we go through it, I'm thinking lethality, and I'm thinking this woman could be killed. And I say something to the woman. Many of them say, I knew something was wrong. Some will blame themselves, will minimize the abuse. And for getting out of a bad relationship, for many, it takes 8 to 10 times before a woman leaves the abusive relationship because of children, because of love, because of control, because she's 75% more likely to be hurt or killed if she leaves that relationship. So there are so many reasons why people would stay despite knowing all of those factors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow, yeah. It's amazing, what human beings will do to one another. I think about that all the time. Another question I had, though, too, is you talked about domestic violence screening. We may have answered this question throughout the conversation, but I want to just briefly touch on that and describe what that entails, domestic violence screening. Is that when a victim or survivor comes to get help and they are given the verbal examination of, okay, what's the problem? Is that the screening?
There are several types of screening.
Tanya's giggling, and then Judy starts talking.
I know.
Well, she knows what's coming.
No, I'm not giggling because of that. It's because, you're right. Just like Alex said, there are several types of screening, because we're, legal aid, we have to do an initial screening. Mm-hmm. We don't get into a lot of detail about the nature or extent of the violence, especially if a caller is contacting us about domestic violence. So we have to do this screening to determine financial eligibility and whether their case meets our criteria for representation. Mm-hmm. So that's a different type of screening.
Right.
When their case makes it to the family practice group, that's when we do more of a thorough assessment. I mean, our goal is to try not to re-traumatize victims. We don't want them to have to constantly retell their story. We don't want to re-trigger their trauma. It's already a stressful situation, so we try to be trauma informed in our interviewing techniques, but that's where we assess. We ask them questions about the history of their relationship, mm-hmm. the history of the violence. We ask about mental health issues, about access to weapons, about the criminal history mm-hmm. of the perpetrator. So we do that type of assessment, and our questionnaire involves those lethality assessments. So we will be asking them, about what happened to them, who,
And because we need to know what happened, and we also know about being trauma informed, and we also know about traumatic brain injury, many clients will not be able to tell us in this linear fashion. They remember different things. So then we have to piece it together. But I brought 6 major questions that in some way they're asked all the time. Mm-hmm. Are you in a relationship where you are physically hurt? You're threatened? Then we ask a lot more if they say yes. Has your partner ever threatened to hurt or take the children? That's a red flag. Has your partner ever destroyed property or hurt your pets? That is also a red flag because of the connection between pet abuse and domestic violence. Has your partner ever forced you to have sex or made you feel uncomfortable doing sexual things? Has your partner ever, I'm going to use the colloquial word, choked you? It is not choked because choking means you've a piece of meat stuck in your throat. Mm-hmm. But many clients still utilize that term. And even though in the outside world we're talking about near fatal strangulation, we utilize those terms. And then we move into aspects of coercive control. Has your partner ever prevented you from seeing friends or family? Do they account for every waking moment? Do they pick you up from work? Do they check your phone? Does that your partner make you account, as I said, for all your time, check up on you, check your mileage, control your finances? All of those things, when taken together, will help us determine the domestic violence, how bad that violence is, and what we need to do to help protect and make sure that client would be safe.
And that's how insidious this issue is, because all of those things that you mentioned can be seen as love protection, caring, compassion. I'm checking on you. I'm making sure you're well. I love you so much. And then that the strike, but I love you, but I'm taking all your money. But you need this, and you need to be safe. All these things. It's a mask. It's so crazy. It's a mask.
Hence why it's complicated.
Yeah.
And also why it takes, on average, 7 to 8 times to leave an abusive relationship.
Yep. Yeah. I think a lot of people have a hard time really realizing that. So I'm glad that we are talking about it and bringing awareness, of course, throughout the whole month of October, as it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And remember, if you need help, you can if it's urgent and emergent, make sure you call 911. If not, you can always call the Journey Center for Safety, 216-391-HELP, 216-391-HELP. And if you feel like you need some legal help, call Legal Aid Society. 216-687-1900 is the intake line, 216-687-1900. And for our Spanish speakers, the number is 216-586-3190. If you speak Spanish or know someone who needs help, call 216-586-3190. We just have a minute left. Anything else that we need to make sure we hit home before we wrap up here? Judy? I'm Tanya. Judy.
Judy's good.
I dare say she is
for
Klimt.
To add to the question, what do you wish more people knew about domestic violence? I want them to know that it's a crime. It's not acceptable. There's a detrimental impact on children.
Yes, children. Yeah.
And also,
that's a whole other conversation.
I know.
Y'all have to
there's
come
not
back.
a one size fits all for victims and survivors.
And I want to say something probably a little bit more pedantic, meaning I think that we should always reframe the question, because what we find is victims who stay, they must like it. If she really was abused, she would have left the situation. Now she went back with him. That means she either likes it or it wasn't that bad. Mm-hmm. And that is still something that we need to train professionals about, as well as society. Because victims stay for so many reasons. I don't know how many of you remember the Ray Rice incidents where he was a football player and he beat up his girlfriend in the elevator. And there was a blog that came after that. Because at that point, why did she stay with him? That was the mantra that came out from everybody. And this blog said it best. I stayed so my children could have a father. I left so my children could have a mother.
Just what
Wow.
I know we're almost out of time, but I also want to say, and this is a conversation Alex and I have all the time, that the needs and concerns of victims, particularly African American victims and survivors, are different from other victims generally. That the intersection of race, sexism, and other discriminations really impact women of color in particular differently, and their needs are different.
Man, thank you. We got to the meat at the end. We have to have y'all come back. It doesn't matter whether it's October or not. This issue persists, so we need to continue the conversation as we do, keeping our voices united on WOVU 95.9 FM. Clicking buttons. Yes, I'm TC Lewis. We are at the end of the program. We are overtime. My bad, but riveting conversation. So everyone have a wonderful day. And remember to keep your eyes open, keep your, when energy feels off, pay attention, because it is. All right, have a wonderful time.
How will we ever know if we were never taught or told? just cause the rich get richer and the poor don't get. Excuse me, but I get so mad. Where could we have been? What could we have had? Yeah, it's time to lose